Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
It's the Tim Ridley Show.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Dan Ronan filling in for Tim. Glad to have you along with us on the show. We are with you till 7 o'clock this morning. We've got about 24 minutes left, and we are pleased to bring in conversation Jackie McManus. Jackie is the CEO of KJ Media. It is a New York-based company, and we are going to talk about the ways to create a more sustainable and supportive and positive corporate culture. Hey, Jackie, how you doing?
Hey, Dan. Good morning. Doing great. How are you?
I'm fine. Up early this morning, but I'll be up early the next couple mornings. So, no big deal. Just go to bed a little earlier and make it work. Got to do what we got to do.
Yep, absolutely. Just grab that extra cup of coffee when you're feeling a little bit of the slump. But that's great. We're so excited to be on and talk to you again.
Jackie, talk about what companies can do and what some companies are doing to try and make their retention better. And I think of things like employee stock ownership programs that I've written about at ttnews.com. All of these things are great. The monetary things are great. But I think more than anything else, though, what really separates the good and the okay companies from the great ones that are companies that really make their employees feel as though, not just feel, but really make their employees a part of the team. They make them a part of the operation, and they tell them that their success helps the overall success of the operation.
That is so true. And, Dan, we definitely have seen a shift over the last few years where a lot of companies, spend, a lot of money when it comes to recruiting drivers on the media side. And attracting new folks to join their company. But specifically within the last 2 years, we have definitely seen a strong shift in companies investing their time and their resources into recruiting, not only recruiting drivers, but retaining and recognizing drivers. I call it the 3 R's. So it's recruiting, retention, and recognition. And really, it starts within the first 90 days when a company brings on a new driver. Obviously, most of the drivers are OTR or they're regional drivers. So it is difficult to build that relationship between the internal team and the external team and the truck drivers on a daily basis. And so we've also realized, too, that praise is the number one reason why drivers are staying with companies versus pay. More often, drivers aren't really making that shift unless, they don't feel as if they're being recognized and praised through companies. So really what we like to talk about with our clients, and it's always great to hear from drivers as well, to hear why they're staying with companies, but it's about creating a positive culture so it promotes job satisfaction across the board. And one way of doing that is to, especially for newer drivers that are coming into the space, is to offer some sort of driver mentorship programs. Even more senior drivers that join a company, so that they feel as if they have some sort of a champion that has, worked with the company for several years and teaches them the ins and outs of what it's like to work with that company. And we've seen a higher retention rate when there's a driver manager from start A to Z with a certain driver long term, because again, they feel that respect, they feel appreciated, and they feel as if they're not just a number on the chart. They feel as if they actually, the CEO and the management actually knows the drivers by name, and that really makes a big difference.
That's hard to do, though, in a company that if you've got a couple hundred or a couple thousand drivers, that's hard to do. But you can tell your leadership team, stay close to your drivers, stay close to your dispatchers, talk with them, maybe every once a quarter, once a month, have a couple of drivers have lunch with someone in the senior leadership team where they can sit and
Yeah.
talk off the record and have a session where they sit down over a sandwich or a soft drink and they talk. And I think more importantly, the folks who are in the corner level offices listen to what the folks on the front lines are saying.
That's the most important piece, is that open communication. And I agree with you. With companies at larger sizes, it's hard to scale that. But I found with a lot of companies that we work with that, have between 500 to 1,000 drivers, they'll make it a point to have someone from management actually come into orientation for about 15 minutes to introduce themselves every week to the orientation class. And just by taking that small amount of time out of the executive leadership team for that 15 minutes to explain what the company culture is, to give a face to the name, and to basically say, here's my number, if you need me, call me. That makes such a big difference to the drivers. And what we're also seeing too is that because of social media now, it's a lot easier, if you will, to host basically live events. So we're seeing a lot of companies, small and large, host Facebook Live events on a quarterly basis. And essentially it's a town hall. And they have drivers that come in and express the good, the bad, and the ugly. And really the goal there is, not every company can make an immediate shift based on the routes, right? I mean, that's sometimes impractical to do, but if drivers are expressing their concerns and they feel as if that leadership cares and wants to try to figure out a solution, while it may not happen overnight, which we all know is sometimes impossible, just voicing their concerns and having leadership really put the chalk to the chalkboard and say, hey, how can we make this a little bit better for our drivers? That makes such a big difference for the drivers to feel overall nurtured and valued, and feel like they can express their concerns, because not every day is going to be a good day. We all know that, especially in our industry.
No, some days are tough days, and some days when you're out in Phoenix and it's 113 degrees.
Right. Right.
That you can have all the air conditioning you want, but it's still going to be a hot, sticky, miserable day.
Yeah, and it's how can companies really make that more tolerable for the drivers that are out there every day that's hauling their freight, because they are really one of the most important pieces of the puzzle for companies to be successful. So it's really encouraging to see that companies are taking the stance on, not only do we want to bring these folks into the industry, but how do we keep the drivers that are currently in the industry? Because through COVID, we've lost so many drivers to other competitive industries that can offer more home time, offer a little bit more pay. And so it's how do we really nurture the folks that we already have, so that, obviously there's going to be folks that are turning over or, retiring. So it's how do we really do this for the greater good of the industry overall.
Jackie McManus joins us. She's up in New York. She's the CEO of KJ Media. KJ Media is the name of her company, talking about creating a supportive and accepting work environment to foster a culture of driver retention. 6:45 now on the Tim Ridley Show. 615-292-6366 is the telephone number. This is Dan Ronan in for Tim Ridley, and we will continue our conversation with Jackie. Hey, good morning. This is the Tim Ridley Show on Sirius XM Channel 146. Dan Ronan sitting in for Tim. 615-292-6366 in conversation with Jackie McManus. Hey, Jackie, I was in the other day, a couple of weeks ago. I was in Savannah, Georgia for a conference about ports, and I had a fascinating conversation with a lady in the trucking industry who was a recruiter for this well-known trucking company, and she is a big advocate of DEI. And I know that in some circles, DEI, if you bring it up, it becomes controversial and it becomes challenging in some respects. But she pointed this out to me, and she said, from a monetary standpoint, there are study after study after study that shows that implementing some of the things that folks who are advocates for DEI support show that companies can increase their revenue and their earnings anywhere between 5 to 15%. And if the business of business is to make money, and that's what we're all trying to do here and live better lives, what's the problem here if study after study by reputable groups have shown that by being more inclusive, by being a bottom-up organization, by encouraging and developing talent, all these things that advocates for this promote, that if it improves your bottom line and shows growth, isn't that what you'd want it to be?
Yeah, and it is spot on. I mean, there is tied metrics and revenue that is showcased and proven based off of DEI. And I often think one of the biggest challenges, obviously as a woman-owned business, is that sometimes there's so much information out there to digest that sometimes companies just don't know where to start. And because there's so many ways to do things and how to look at, really, targeting more women or, diversity and inclusion, where to start. And for us, it's really simple. It's about creating messaging that's set to each type of driver persona. So essentially what we look at is, okay, give us, your top 3 types of driver personas, what their primary interests are, what their secondary interests are. Typically, if it's an OTR company, we're targeting younger folks that typically are, maybe buying a new home or creating new families, right? And so have targeting messaging towards those people and then showcase those people as well on your website. Very often in the trucking industry, there's only several stock images that go around. So we're very encouraging of taking pictures of, everyone at your office that is, either truck drivers, warehouse workers, and showcasing them on your social media. I mean, social media is the most powerful tool out there on your social media sites, on your website, so that people feel that they're being represented through your company. And it's as simple as making those small changes and implementing them to be able to really offer a more diverse workforce and then recruit a more diverse workforce over time. There's obviously a lot more standardized methods to go about this, but I'm a true believer in just taking those baby steps as far as companies. So, not creating a mountain out of a molehill, but basically being able to put together small actionable steps so that companies are seeing results right off the bat. And then they'll start seeing it month over month, year over year, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you have some really great organizations that are out there, Women in Trucking, others that are trying to encourage. The ATA has a council on encouraging more women and getting more women into the trucking industry, not just in driving roles, but in other roles as well.
Right.
That these organizations are really doing a lot of really important work in the field, plowing the soil and getting it ready and doing what needs to be done to try and bring people into the industry who might not thought about transportation-related jobs as a career.
Absolutely. And to be honest, Dan, my family does not come from the trucking industry, and I was blessed to be introduced with this industry about 18 years ago. And this was right before 2007, 2008, during the financial crisis.
Yeah.
And when I came into this industry, the company I was with at the time was growing 50% year over year, even through the financial crisis. Then we go through COVID, Dan, and my company was blessed to grow during COVID because supply chain was still necessary. That's what we heard all throughout the news. And I remember friends of mine calling me that aren't in the industry and said, "Oh my gosh, now I understand why you're in this space." And it's a space that I'm passionate about as a female millennial in our industry, to get more folks interested, because it's not just a driver, but from a driver role, even if you start as a warehouse worker, get your CDL, which can be paid for by a company. And if you're, want to, you can then become a dispatch manager, an operations manager. I'd say about 30% of my clients right now, Dan, actually still actively hold their CDL, and they're CEOs of companies, right? Without the college debt. So, and so the opportunities in our industry, they're expansive, they're growing. There's so many opportunities to learn, and so getting more folks in this industry, and it starts from the ground level, right? That's how all industries grow. But if we can get more, and as we are getting more folks in the industry and show the career path of what this industry can show, that's really where we're going to make a mark. And the organizations that you mentioned, they're doing a phenomenal job at showcasing the brand voice of the industry, which is what we need so that we can grow overall, because the industry is not going anywhere, Dan. It's an $850 billion industry, and it's only going to continue to grow. So it's how do we get the younger folks excited and involved in this space? And it really comes down to talking about it, through everything that you do through TT News, through Women in Trucking, through our outlets, so that we are able to showcase to, America about everything we eat, drink, live. 76% of it comes on a truck, and that's why we need it.
As someone who's now been in the industry for several years and has been a transportation reporter for many, the things I notice when I'm driving and I'm in my car, and I will see just the enormous amount of trucks that are on Interstate 95, not far from where I live, or the DC Capitol Beltway. I'll go out one morning, 2 mornings a week. I have to be out of the house really early, and so I'll be up and on the Beltway pretty early in the morning, and you will see hundreds of tractor trailers doing their thing on the Beltway, some regional, some over the road, some going to the Port of Baltimore or up to Philadelphia to get what they need. It's pretty amazing.
And that alone is just such a beautiful sight, especially early in the morning, to have the sight of the amount of trucks that you see in the morning, especially when the sun's coming up. Nothing better than grabbing a good cup of coffee and looking at that view, because it's absolutely beautiful. And I always say one of the silver linings through COVID is that folks that are outside of our industry really realize the importance of supply chain. It wasn't the coolest industry in the world maybe 10 to 15 years ago, but I think through COVID, people realized, oh, wow, it's essential. And so, same with a lot of other essential workforce in the United States. But with that is gearing up people to become more interested at the high school, college level, and especially as we're adopting technology in our space. That's really going to move the needle as far as how we're able to recruit the next generation of, drivers, warehouse workers, and management into our industry.
Hey, Jack, you just got a couple of minutes before we conclude our conversation. How do we get to the point where the folks that are in the top offices, they say, oh, we want feedback, and the like. Yeah. But how do we make sure that the feedback gets to the right folks, and that the companies, it's not just something that is, something that ends up in someone's file and never gets pushed up to the top?
Yeah, my biggest recommendations to companies, and a lot of my clients have implemented this, is create a recruiting and retention team that exists of not only, definitely have actual drivers in that team, but executive leadership, and put it on the calendar to meet quarterly. This way, if your team is doing, let's say, monthly surveys or quarterly surveys, it's a 1 to 2 hour meeting with different leaders or different levels within your company to discuss the issues at hand. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If it's a committee that's dedicated to it, they're going to make change. They're going to make traction. And so our biggest advice is create that committee, depending on your company size, but involve every aspect of your organization, basically captains, so that when they're meeting, you get all different points of view, not just executive leadership or not middle management. You're getting it from the driver and the other parties to really see how can they be change agents into their organization. So my biggest piece of advice: create a driver recruitment and retention committee. Have about 5 to 10 people on it from different levels of leadership, and meet on a quarterly basis so that you can review the opinions that you receive, the feedback that you receive, so that you can start implementing change.
Fair enough. Hey, Jackie, we're coming up against a break, but I'd like to give our listeners the opportunity to reach out to you. How can they do that real quickly?
Yep, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jackie McManus, or my website, kjtransmedia.com.